There we are. Good evening. Welcome to the September 20th, 2021 meeting of the Stillwater City Council. This time I will call the meeting to order, and I'll ask you all to stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, item 3 on the agenda is the consent docket. Councilors, questions, comments, or motion on the consent docket?
Motion to approve the consent docket.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent docket. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, the consent docket is approved. Next up, public comment on items not scheduled for public hearing. Get my stack here. I'll remind you that you have 3 minutes to speak. We do have a number of speakers signed up tonight, so please limit your comments to 3 minutes. There'll be a clock up on the screen for you. And I will call you up in the order that I have these pieces of paper. First up, Preston Bobo. Do you have them on the computer already?
I put them in the sheets.
We have them.
You have them? Oh, okay. So you guys have my slides. I know what they look like. Give me 1 second to pull them up then.
You do have 3 minutes.
Yep. I do want to say how awesome, while I'm pulling this up, how awesome city staff is, though. I've worked with city staff a lot, and they are fantastic. Very accommodating. I am glad they got you those. So bear with me 1 second to pull these up so you guys can see them. Okay, so you should have slide 1 and slide 2. Slide 1 is, so anytime in science we can pull out a specific group of a population and isolate that group and see an impact of a change to that group. It's great. So you look, slide 1 is just the so what you really want to look at is the line, and the axis on the right is the scale of that line, right? That's what you're looking at. It's a percentage. That's the percentage of all of the people who have been infected with COVID-19 in Oklahoma. You see, before school starts, right? It's a rather low percentage, and then as school started, that percentage goes up. Is that clear? Okay, perfect. Then, after we get the injunction against the Senate bill that's preventing masks, that number starts going down. Now, we also know that certain schools had already been ignoring that. So, yeah, very clear. The other slide is right here in Stillwater when Dr. Moore began his mask expected policy. So again, we have this isolated population. School children aren't generally out of the community. They start school, cases go up a lot. Masks are expected in school, cases dramatically lower. So again, I was just trying to present data in a novel way so you guys could see the huge impact this is having on specific populations. And that's really all I have. So.
Thank you, Preston.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate you being here. Next up, I have Chandra Eschman. Is it Chandra here? Chandra? Nope. Karen Flack.
Hi there, I'm Karen Flack, and I've lived in Stillwater over 30 years now. I'm probably coming at the mask mandate and the COVID injections in a different light. I've watched in the last 2 years or so, I've watched our presidential election being stolen. I've watched the COVID pandemic, which is real, but it has spread fear and become political. I don't know of any of what we get to listen to on the media, which has become corrupt, is honest or real. We just don't know what to believe. I don't know what to believe. I'm speaking for myself. I know families have lost loved ones. People have had to die in the hospital alone. That breaks my heart. Our country was shut down. That's never been done in the history of whatever. Our rights and free speech on social media is being taken away from us if we don't agree. Our families have lost their businesses, families in this town, because of mandates. I've watched Biden leave U.S. citizens in Afghanistan to die. These things all break my heart, and I say all this because our country's a mess, and I'm at a point, I have never been a conspiracy theorist, never in my life have I been that. I'm 70 years old, but I don't trust our government anymore or the CDC for their ever-changing guidelines. I am against mandates. I am against COVID injections if you don't want to do it. We are individuals. We should have the freedom and the right to seek out information on our own and to go to the people that we trust and the doctors that we trust and make our own decisions for ourselves and our families. So I want to end this with Psalms 46:1-3. God is our refuge and our strength, and ever present in our troubles. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fleck. Next up is Riley Fleck.
Ladies and gentlemen, here we are in Constitution Week talking about another non-mandate mandate. I find that a bit ironic, and maybe we can chuckle about it later. So I want to provide a little clarity on this ordinance as I read it. It's very similar to the last one. And in the last one, I call it a non-mandate mandate because it wasn't a mandate. There was much discussion about the verbiage, may and shall. And I witnessed it. And the city attorney, John Dorman, so he was asked a question by a counselor about what do we do with a business that egregiously doesn't follow the ordinance. Well, unfortunately, you can't egregiously not follow the ordinance as a business. And so that question is a little hard to take. But Dorman answered the question by saying that he would go after their business licenses. Out of all the things that I've disagreed with that you guys have done, that was the most egregious. For following the ordinance, you can go after their business licenses. You can go look at the tape if you want. It's there. For clarity for citizens, this is not a mandate. Okay. Number one, there are exemptions in the mandate, right? No one has the authority to police those exemptions. If somebody asks me a private medical question, I do not have to answer it, for now. So based on that alone, it's not a mandate. Second, businesses may deny entry, not shall, may. That means a business cannot break the ordinance by allowing patrons. They also, the employees have private medical information that is not expected or cannot be demanded by the employer. Okay, so on top of that, everything else is pretty much the same except one important distinction. You have roped in the public education system, okay, of which you have zero authority. Okay, there's a public school board. They have the authority. Mr. Mayor, you've mentioned over and over and over when people hammered you about getting the school shut down. No, that wasn't, the school board handles that. I don't make those decisions. So I need, if you don't look at that, you're going to catch a lawsuit and you're going to cost us money. And so you need to look hard at those things.
Thank you, Mr. Flack. Todd Smith.
All right, my name is Todd Smith. I'm 18 years Stillwater resident, and I'd once again like to point out the fact that I have no confidence in any of your ability. You don't present facts. The facts that you do present at these meetings are incorrect. Councilor Wedlake wanted to talk about a mask study that you throw out there that hasn't been peer reviewed. And if you read up on it, it's full of holes that look like it was put together by a fourth grade science class. It really does. So the fact that that's going to be what you throw out before it's even peer reviewed gives me even less faith than you. Councilor Zlowski, I've never heard you state a fact. Everything with you is feelings. How do we feel about the trailer park? I'm not sure how I feel. Come with some facts. Facts don't care about your feelings. Of course, Preston Bobo, that's my biggest problem with you. That your judgment was so poor to put him on the planning commission. So no, it doesn't give me any faith in your ability to lead this community. Why would we ever trust you? There's an agenda behind the COVID. We've got 9 new pharma billionaires that have been created in the past year. Pfizer's made over $1 billion just from the government this year and expects to make $26 billion alone on just the Pfizer vaccine. VAERS has reported all vaccines from August 1 of 2007 to 10/30/2020, 3,001. From December 1st of 2020 to 7/13/2021, over 9,000. Pretty significant increase. Facts are there if you look at them. And that's from your own government that you fall down and worship, and when you say your prayers to St. Fauci at night, who's not been wrong, go ahead and laugh. That's okay. That's okay. Adverse events from all COVID vaccines have been 384,270 with 4,812 deaths. Do some research. Look at some facts. Look at some studies that maybe aren't from the CDC and Fauci. If you think I'm going to comply with anything from a group of individuals that are going for an agenda without any facts, you're crazy, because I'm not going to. I won't comply. You thought people didn't comply before? Wait till this time. We will push back. We will not comply. We will not let you run over us anymore. We're done. We're done. We're going to be 10 times louder, 10 times stronger. You'll be the first thing that you think of when you wake up and the last thing you think about when you go to bed. Will be the citizens that are pushing back. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Greg Adams. Excuse me, Greg Adams.
Hello, I'm Greg Adams, Stillwater resident. I've only been here about 3.5 years, but we came here, we really enjoyed the community when we first came. There's parts of it we still enjoy. It was disappointing though this last year, starting in 2020 with this pandemic or so-called pandemic. It's really not even a pandemic if you look it up the definition. A lot of these things are really not right, and it doesn't take much research to determine that they're not right. But anyway, it really is divisive. This is more than anything very divisive, and I really would urge you all not to do this, consider this mandate, or as Riley says, really not even mandate, but I would not put that pressure, because what you're doing is you are leading the way toward causing children to be families and children to be starved in this community. If all the grocery stores said you may not enter here without a mask, then where are they going to get their food? That's where it's heading. It's not there yet, but it's heading there. And you guys, if you don't do what's right, you're going to be condemning the innocent. You already are. Really, and I'll just say this. I feel like this body, I've never really felt this before, but it really feels like that of the thousands and thousands of dollars you've spent to try to get people to take this shot, this experimental gene therapy, it's not a vaccine, and it's experimental gene therapy, that you could be spending that same amount of money promoting people keeping their children instead of aborting them. You know, that, you are, I mean, just a simple resolution. Would you be willing to consider a resolution condemning abortion? So it's all related. I know I wasn't supposed to speak on that, they said, because it wasn't on the agenda. Abortion's not on the agenda. But the oppression of people, and if I don't stand up now, I mean, how it's going to get worse and worse, because that's what bullies do. Bullies just get worse and worse. I mean, I saw it last year. You saw it at the college. Okay, this group said, okay, the fraternities and sororities, they need to get tested once a month or something. Then it just got worse and worse, more and more. So this was going to head if you don't stop now. And the other thing I'd just like to say, there's a lot of people that claim to stand up here and speak for God. And I'd just like to encourage you to remember when Josaphat and Ahab, you can look it up, I might be wrong, 450 prophets they brought, said, and told the king exactly what he wanted to hear. And Josaphat said, isn't there even one prophet? And he said, yeah, one. There's 150 false prophets. There's only one good one. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. William Crozier.
I don't know if we're supposed to wear a mask while we're talking. They still can't hear my voice at Sonic. And try to order. My voice is too low. Bill Crozier, special ed teacher, still trying to find a job here with all the jobs that we have, try to keep us above Mississippi next year. To me, masks can be good, bad, whatever, on both sides. It's like the wheels of justice. As far as I'm concerned, you got the wheels of justice, you got the balance on both sides, you got a casket on one side, and you got masks on the other side. One of the things I was trying to do recently over the last 6 months was get the people of Johns Hopkins in Pennsylvania and Finland joined together. The dogs can now sniff the virus. They were doing it in Florida. Been doing it 6 months ago. We needed 100 million dogs, which would be nice to have instead of the virus. You don't get on a plane if you smell like your virus makes you contagious. The 6 million people that died, as we were talking about, from virus the first time, 1918. My grandmother didn't die of that. My father had problems from it. So it's still a choice. Do you want to live or die? Most people would rather live than die. I mean, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die to get there, right? One of my friends that was worked with Patton in North Africa, I was praised him when I was the first substitute. Raise your hands if I talked too long. He was ill for a while, took his place, and he went into the hospital one day, got pneumonia and died because there were no masks at the time. Afghans, we're going to bring them in. They ought to be vetted. So if you want to talk about when the Vietnamese came to Oklahoma, your office here at OSU, Mr. Kluver, pretty young at the time, but his mother was a news reporter for Channel 8 in Tulsa. She brought the Vietnamese in. We didn't get all of them, so the communists killed 1 million of them. I don't know how many of the people the Afghans are going to kill. Global warming, well, it's never too hot, too cold, or too wet in Oklahoma, right? So the weather makes a difference on these viruses, so you got to pay attention to them, what they're doing. And if you have electric cars, remember they don't work in extreme cold and heat. We try to get those done, even though my first one I had in 1958. Being a right-wing radical Christian Republican, to me, as far as I'm concerned, it comes out of loop. The time period's following exactly the timeline. If you want to know, give me a call or send me an email. I used to work with General Stafford, so my email's the vibrations of the atomic clock, 9,192,631,770 cycles per second. Put CR on that at Gmail and it would get me. I'll help you out with that. Did I cover anything else? Was there another 3.5 minutes? Did I say the Gettysburg thing?
You didn't.
Gettysburg, the address took about 2.5 minutes, same length of time as the GED. People may not remember what we say here, but they will remember what we do here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Oh, thank you, sir. Chandra Esrin, could you come in?
Hello. All right.
I'm Chandra Ashman, Stillwater resident. Hello again, and thank you for your commitment to our community. I read your proposed mask ordinance, and many of the reasons you mentioned for putting it forth were discussed ad nauseum last year, so I won't go over everything again. There are thorough scientific studies that exist, and I believe they've already been shared with most of you if you've been here over the last year. These are good studies by hardworking people that have conclusions in opposition to the reasoning you have given for the ordinance. I don't have them conveniently filed away to reference quickly for this meeting, but I don't know if you can raise your hand. If you want me to try to send them to you again, I can do that. I don't know if you're allowed to interact. Okay. So these studies verify, for example, that the equipment that will stop a virus is not an everyday mask. The particles of a virus go through almost any mask, and we cannot control viruses to this extent reasonably. It's unethical to push face coverings and vaccines on people who don't want or need those measures. Again, it's unethical, which is why a lot of people are so resistant, because they're realizing this and they just feel hurt. So who's responsible for the negative effects of compulsory masking besides the consumer? Is it you guys? Are you going to be there when people have negative effects happening from masking? We don't know, but those are happening to people across the country. So if you're not willing to take responsibility, let's roll back the overreach a little bit, and let's think about things that we could be doing that are more positive for our community. With respect to people's level of comfort to gathering and distancing, we could be promoting gathering outdoors while it's still nice and sunny. We could be promoting eating local, shopping at the farmers market, supporting our farmers, and I won't be wearing a mask if I'm not sick. I'm glad to if I am sick. We used to be able to tell when people are sick if they were wearing a mask, and now it's really confusing. Yeah. So thank you.
Bob Smith.
Thank you. I'm Bob Smith. I'm a 22-year resident. I'm 85 years old. I've seen a lot of things in my life. Seen things now I've never seen before and thought I'd never see. How that our government has taken control. If you control the mass with one thing, next time you control them with something even greater. And the next time with greater, until we lose our independence, we lose our identity. So I'm talking about cloth masks or any mask. I've not proven that they prevent the spread of COVID or any other thing, or if they don't prevent it. Those of us with COPD, we're inhaling our own warm air. I have it. We have trouble breathing. We have heaviness in our chest and our lungs. We have problems. I've had bacterial pneumonia 2 times during the previous mask mandate by wearing a mask 40 hours a week while at work. Now on the vaccines, I have this to say. In April 10th this year, or August 10th, pardon me, no evidence that COVID-19 vaccine prevents catching or transmitting of the virus. There's no evidence to the contrary either. The AMA and CDC has evidence that the infection spread in 5 of the vax. Informed consent and refusal in vax trigger scrutiny and is a core component of the ethical clinical relationship with all forms of medical therapy. Consent should always precede the vax. If declined, the patient should be respected. This vax carries a risk of great harm and is an invasive medical procedure. any medical bullying or coercement procedure is a distinct infringement of any bodily privacy. I've seen that many, many times lately. I had to comply wearing a mask at work, but I'm not complying with anything else.
Thank you, sir. I don't have anyone else signed up to speak. Did anyone else feel like they turned something in? All right, thank you all. Appreciate you being here. Next up is item 6, public hearings. Our first item under public hearings is item 6A, receive public comment regarding a request for a map amendment to rezone properties addressed as 2302 and 2324 West 8th Avenue and 802 Southwestern Road from small lot, single family to commercial shopping zoning. This was deferred from our September 13th, 2021 meeting. It's item CC-21-168. Ms. Carnley, did we have good notice on this item?
Yes, we did.
I know there was a question about the notice. We feel like we have legal opinion that shows notice was good.
Yes, notice was good.
Thank you so much. Mr. Gross.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. I'm Lance Gross, Planning Manager. And the first case before you tonight is a map amendment at 8th and Western. If approved, the zoning would change from RSS to CS, which is small lots, residential single family to commercial shopping. Staff received a protest petition and protest letters for this application. The hatch pattern on the map indicates the subject site. And as you can see, it's on the west side of Western. And 8th Avenue bisects the subject site. This is an aerial view looking to the north. The red polygon is the site. 8th Avenue is right here. Western is here. And 6th Avenue is up here at the top of the photo. This is the future land use map. This is from the comprehensive plan. And what we've done is overlay the subject site onto the map. Western is here, 6th Avenue is here. And as you can see, the subject site goes into the portion that's considered to be high density residential. Western is a commercial corridor proposed. Within this high density of residential, it does allow some commercial uses. This is a view looking to the southwest from the east side of Western. 8th Avenue is over here, and this is Western. This is a view looking to the northwest. And this is the zoning map. The hatch pattern is the site. Currently zoned RSS. RSS is located to the west, to the south, and also to the east. And CS, commercial shopping, is located to the north. This is the zoning comparison chart. The center column is the RSS, and the right-hand side is the CS. And it lists out all the different uses that are permitted. This is the protest petition map. The 300-foot buffer is the bubble that goes around here. The green is the subject site. The red indicates the protest petition location. The black is the right-of-way. Be happy to answer any questions.
Lance, would you just clarify the protest map that you just had up? That 300-foot buffer, that's the circle that's notified in the neighborhood when a rezoning is proposed.
That is correct. We send out notification to all the individuals who own property within 300 feet. That is correct.
Lance, did the petition have sufficient signatures to trigger?
It did not. We calculated, and it was 31%.
And the required percentage?
The required percentage to create a supermajority vote is 50%.
So this wouldn't require a supermajority vote of the council?
That's my understanding.
Counselors, any further questions for Lance?
Yeah, there, of the numerous emails we received about this, there was one that indicated that that one of these addresses had come up for rezoning about 6 years ago and was denied.
Yes.
Could you fill me in on why that decision was made at that point and what might have changed over this 6 years?
Sure. That was back in 2015. It was a similar type of situation, wanting to go from RSS to CS. The reason why the Planning Commission recommended denial was the fact that they didn't feel that it fit the neighborhood. So.
Any further questions for Lance? Thank you, Lance.
Thank you.
At this point, I will open the public hearing. I think we have a representative from the applicant here.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Josh Powers, Universal Surveying and Mapping, here for the client. So we are here to discuss the map change. My client has been here all his life, grew up here. He wants to make this a good community area so we can grow and be where everybody wants to be. This meets the comprehensive plan, which you've all seen. It's been there for many, many, many years. The biggest problem we've heard from the clients so far is they're worried about the traffic along Western. So I live on Western currently. The biggest problem I'm going to see that I've seen so far are the two subdivisions going in south of 26th. That's going to cause more traffic than anything on Western. We know what's going to happen to Western. It's going to have to widen one of these days. So after talking to all the landowners in the area, we have decided to move this to a office zoning. We understand that's a more restrictive area, more restrictive zoning. The client's business is going to go in there, which is a chiropractic business. The business has now been in business for 50 years now. This is what he wants to do in this area, is to develop it so the community can use it. We want to keep it as the community area. We know that within that 300 feet, there are 13 owner-occupied homes. 18 businesses within that 300 feet. 25 total parcels is what I counted. We will keep 8th Avenue is going to be paved according to city standards. You have any questions?
Councilors? So you're proposing, instead of this moving to residential, or excuse me, to commercial shopping, that you would like
Yes.
it to be rezoned as commercial office?
Yes, yes. And we also have some layouts if you guys would like to see them.
We don't.
Okay.
We're not, we can't, as a council, consider the
Just
expected
asking.
use. We've got to just consider the zoning request. So I just want to confirm with the city attorney that he's allowed to downgrade his zoning request?
Yes, that would be permissible because it's in the same commercial zoning category and it's a downgrade.
Okay.
Its use, that would be permissible.
I don't suppose, where'd Lance go? I don't suppose we have a what's permissible in office.
Yeah, I do right here.
List somewhere, do we?
Would you like to see it?
Let me see what,
Do you have it up already?
if you have it on them.
Thank you, sir.
Is it in my packet somewhere?
No, I
Okay.
have it here. Mayor, I have brought it.
All right. So from your understanding, what would the change not allow you to build in this?
We've heard that
zone?
the local residents are worried about like a Dollar General or something like that going in there. And we want to make sure that the hours of usage are between 8 and 5, that area, not getting people coming in late in the evenings or all sorts of the night. So that's what we were concerned about. We stayed with commercial shopping at first because we have butted a commercial shopping area. And the comprehensive plan said commercial shopping, so that's what we went with. But after talking to the landowners, the client has suggested that we move to office. Everything he's wanting to do is office related anyways.
Okay.
But we thought, of course, commercial shopping was appropriate with abutting that, so.
Councilors, any further questions?
I think one notable exception that I saw when I went into our codes to see the difference between office and commercial shopping was that there was, and I believe this is correct, like a dispensary wouldn't be something that would be allowed as of right or with a specific use
Correct.
permit.
And we are going to put restrictive covenants on the property, so there will be those on the property.
I know that the mayor indicated that we weren't going to look at the drawings tonight. Have those been shared with the neighbors and community around this area?
I think they have. The client will speak in just a minute. He can tell you if they have or not, so I don't know that.
I know for the commercial shopping, there's some required things when you're abutting residential areas. Does commercial office have those same requirements, Lance? So the landscaping or 6-foot buffer for the adjacent properties, does commercial office have that same requirement?
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
Lance, would
Thank
you, I mean, would it be helpful for him to pull up the municipal code? You can search it real quick
Well, yeah, we have it actually on the zoning comparison chart.
with the office. Oh, yeah, that's helpful.
At the right-hand column, this is for office. Yeah, it requires a 3-foot tall or 40% opaque up to 5 feet tall buffer.
Okay.
And that was another concern that we've heard from the local residents.
Okay.
Any further questions for the applicant at this point? Mr. Hanson going to speak as well?
Yes, he's going to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Joyce, councilors, thank you. Real quick, Jennifer, my kids, parents, thanks for all the support and sharing in this vision. I think this is really an example of when a sign goes up around Stillwater, things happen. Several years ago, we knew about the C3 plan. We saw the sign go up. We watched it was actually May 18th, 2015 council meeting where the map amendment failed at that point because there wasn't a plan. There wasn't something going in that particular property. So knowing that the Berry family, who owned it at the time, had an interest in selling the property, we reached out and acquired the property at 2302 West 8th. We love that area. We travel western every day, and my wife's business is actually celebrating its 50th year this year here in Stillwater. Her dad started it in 1971, so pretty interesting timing of this. So when we were able to acquire 2302 West 8th, we tried for more than 2 years to acquire the property at 802 Southwestern to improve the neighborhood. It was a house that had severe water damage. It wasn't repairable, and so it was required to be torn down. Before we did that, we did donate it to Habitat for Humanity, as well as we let the Stillwater Fire Department and Stillwater Police Department come in and train on it prior to demolition. Probably another year later, my parents had shared in the vision of what could be there on Western, just how exciting that part of town is growing and becoming, and so I was able to lean on them and share in that vision, and they acquired the property at 2324. So that's kind of a quick rundown of that. And then I think the one thing that I've really heard the most about with this is that, you know, with this rezoning, it would be the lever that starts the widening of Western. I'm certainly not an engineer, but I don't think that, you know, traveling Western daily as I do, I don't think what traffic we would produce there would be a trigger for that. And I will say, you know, as several people are here, you know, we are neighbors now. I hear you. We have agreed to the less intrusive zoning, as well as the concern over the dispensaries, that we would put that in our covenants when we create those. We are already engaged with Habitat for Humanity and Chief Esri at the fire department so they can use the property for training before it would be demoed. And I'll just end. I know Brian and I had a nice conversation the other day. I certainly appreciate him saying this, that we're both good people and we just want different things right now. So that's all I have. Any questions?
Thank you, sir. Councilors?
All right.
Thank you. Okay, I have a number of folks signed up for public comment in this section. If you haven't signed up and you're expecting to speak, please run over and let Patty know. I will call you up in, again, in the order I have these. In the public hearing portion of our meeting, you'll have 5 minutes to speak. So please state your name and let us know your comments. Starting with Bill McLean.
Mayor Joyce, city councilors, fellow citizens of Stillwater. My wife and I have lived on West 10th Avenue for almost 20 years in the same house that we moved into in January of '02. I'm concerned about this zoning request, that it would negatively impact our property values, that it would negatively impact the traffic along Western, and I think it would also negatively impact the community along Western as well. Those aren't big fancy houses, but they're our neighborhood, and it's a nice neighborhood to raise a family in. And I just feel that this would ignore the integrity of the neighborhood and have a future negative impact for people who would live there. Personally, I feel I would like for Stillwater to grow. I want what's best for Stillwater. I have always felt like a MAPS plan for Stillwater, just for a size town that we have. We couldn't do anything on the order that Oklahoma City could, but I think that would help us to control growth, and it would respect the integrity of our neighborhoods, and I think it would allow all citizens of Stillwater to profit from our the investment that we all would make in Stillwater. I don't believe that the way to grow our town is to ignore the integrity of established neighborhoods and go that route. So anyway, that's all I had to say. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, sir. Next up, I have Jim Scheidler.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. I'm Jim Scheidler, 2215 West 8th, lifelong resident of Stillwater. My grandparents, great-grandparents came here 118 years ago. And so my grandparents, my great-grandparents, my parents are all buried here. I come today and I feel like we've kind of been thrown a curveball on this because we were here to talk about rezoning for commercial shopping. And now it's suggested that that has been changed. I live 3 houses from the property, and I looked at the map that was shown, supposedly the 300 feet. I think there'd certainly be some question about that, looking at the rules that they use. But in any case, I was excluded, not notified. I have not received any proposed drawings of offices or that sort of thing. I'm 3 houses away. The property under consideration is surrounded by residents on 3 sides, and I've talked to the neighbors. There is empty commercial property all over Stillwater. If you look at Main Street, particularly downtown, there's not a block that doesn't have vacancies. You've worked hard on, I believe it's block 34, and working for years on a useful plan for that. The intrusion into neighborhoods, I think, is detrimental to our community. This neighborhood is adjacent to the Westwood neighborhood. Our neighborhood is within walking distance for children to Westwood School, the school I went to, and I walk to my office at the OSU campus from this neighborhood. By rezoning these commercial, we're squeezing these neighborhoods out, moving people further out, and what's going to happen to the core of our city? Will it become low rent district and then provide other problems for you on the commission? This is a desirable neighborhood, and I would suggest that where there's opposition now, in fact, to the commercial shopping, here in the meeting and asking you, oh, we're going to change this to another designation, it certainly hasn't given us time to look at that. And saying that the property covenants will represent one thing or another, that's fine, but those property covenants could be changed tomorrow, obviously. So I would urge you and our neighbors that live in the area to consider rejecting the commercial shopping proposal that is proposed tonight. I want to thank you for your service. Having served on city committees for many years, the library board, when we built the new library, airport authority, I think serving on the commission, you really deserve our grateful appreciation. Thank you so much for hearing me tonight.
Thank you, sir. Next up, I have Brian Correa.
Brian Correa, 2401 West 8th Avenue, Stillwater, Oklahoma. The pronunciation was correct.
Thank you.
Mayor. As you know, I have submitted a lot of written materials about this assertion of noncompliance, and now that the city has rendered their legal interpretation that the notice was good, I would just like to stop my arguments trying to justify my interpretation, but this is pretty easy. Unless the city has been able to redefine the word excluding to mean including, which is the exact opposite of the word, that would be a novel interpretation of a regulation, especially a one-sentence regulation that is so simple to understand. I was going to talk about the victims. Mr. Scheidler is one of the victims of this policy because he lives across the street from the development. Now, he's only 250 feet away, but when you start measuring from the west side of Western Road, you don't touch Mr. Scheidler. But even if the city has been able to develop a legal interpretation that can redefine the word excluding to mean including, I still have this. Those words are there for a reason. They just didn't magically appear in the ordinance. Somebody put them in there for a reason. So what is that reason? What is that intent? Why is that statement there? And when we look at that statement, it just says this: rights-of-ways don't count. You don't get penalized for living across the street. That is the essence of my legal argument. And as you know, it's just not map amendments. This statement, this exclusion statement, is throughout the land code, in special use permits, in overlay districts, it's everywhere. So this isn't something unique to map amendments. And here's the thing that I can't understand. If people who have to implement this ordinance are unable to do it, don't want to do it a different way, I don't care. They own the rule. All they have to do is draft up a new rule, put it out for public comment, we'll come in here and debate it, and we'll change it. So I ask you again, why is that statement there? What does it mean? And if it's a problem, why didn't we just fix it? We've done about all we can do under this community involvement program. And besides Mr. Scheidler, I was going to talk about one of the other 4 properties who were involved. the Ledke men's, their property 9, they're right across the street from Mr. Scheidler, 58 feet from Western. They have 10 children. I'm not exaggerating, they have 10 children. And the city just told them kind of like, hey kids, we're sorry, you know. You may live 250 feet away, but we think you'll enjoy growing up and playing in commercial shopping. You can find some really cool things in the trash there. Sorry. So that's all I want to say, and I want you to think about what the right thing is for these people. I call them the aggrieved parties, like the Ledke men's and Mr. Scheidler, and then the people we have called the affected property owners who received the notice, and all the people in the neighborhood, the whole community. This is a community. It goes from 8th to 12th. It's not just this little 300 thing. This is a connected community of people. And so if there's any doubt, any reasonable doubt in your mind that maybe our legal interpretation of this ordinance is not 100% correct, and that there could be other people out there in the city, just like the Ledkemans and the Scheidlers, and we need to find those people.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you very much.
Thank you. Betsy Showalter.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilors. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to speak about this issue. I am Betsy Showalter. I live at 2402 West 8th Avenue. My property abuts right up against 2324 West 8th Avenue, which is part of the subject site that's under consideration. I was so glad that you referenced the 2015 attempt to rezone 2302 West 8th to commercial shopping, and that it was denied because they just didn't feel like it fit the character of the neighborhood. Our neighborhood has not changed. Our neighborhood has not changed in 65 years since most of the houses were built. The character of our neighborhood is unique. We've been described as a hidden street before the house on the corner was torn down. We've been described as a funny little neighborhood. We've been described as an interesting neighborhood. The architecture of our houses is unique. One of the houses on the subject site is 100 years old. It was built in 1920. George Berry lived there. There's a house not on the subject site, but on our street, part of our neighborhood, that is one of the, I think, only 2 or 3 mid-century modern houses in the city, constructed by an OSU professor, and he was also an OSU architect. You can't get history back. Once you tear down a 100-year-old house, you don't get it back. It's easy to apply to rezone. It's hard to get your architecture and your history back from being obliterated. We have been exploring the idea of putting that house, the Chamberlain house, and I would think there's at least one other house in our street, to get them designated as historic structures. That takes time. The time that it took those properties to age to the age they are now, it takes equally long to find records and so forth to apply for historic preservation. The last history study was done in 1998. That was more than 20 years ago. There were houses then that qualified for historic interest, some of them relating to the Berry family. And surely in that amount of time, other structures have probably qualified. So it's important for, I understand that we have to provide shopping and whatnot, but we don't need shopping. We've lived just fine the way we are. The folks that are going to be living south of town, they need shopping. You want to build shopping for them? Build shopping for them. We don't need it. We don't need offices. I walked through Wicklow Professional Center this afternoon. There are empty offices in there that are waiting for somebody to be interested in moving in. We don't need offices. We don't need medical offices. We don't need commercial shopping. You need to respect our neighborhood. I've lived in my house for 41 years, and talking about the C3 plan talks about respecting the historic nature of neighborhoods. Well, that's what we're asking for. Respect our neighborhood. Don't just dismiss us. There aren't very many of us on 8th, but there are a lot of us in the neighborhood. We're connected to both sides of Western. We're connected all the way to people down on 10th and 11th. Don't disrespect us by just dismissing us and saying, oh, well, these properties are expendable. They're not worth saving. I beg to differ. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Adam Knapp.
Good evening. I'm Adam Naff. I'm a lifelong 55-year resident of Stillwater, and I'm here to let you know it's not just the people that live in that area that are against this. I live about 3/4 of a mile away in the Westwood neighborhood, and watching the Planning Commission meeting on the hearing on this, the main argument for it was, well, it's just an extension of a already commercial area. Using that argument, we might as well just make the entire town commercial. Just an extension, just an extension, just an extension. Where does it end? And Mr. Scheidler already mentioned some of my other points, and Ms. Showalter also. There's all kinds of empty lots that are already zoned for this. There's empty buildings that are zoned for this. There's no need to go into a vibrant, beautiful neighborhood and rezone it commercial. And that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Steve Trompler.
Good evening. Steve Trompler, live at 818 South Wicklow. I've submitted a packet last week. If you had any questions about that, I'd be glad to answer them as well. To begin with, the plan for this development encroaches too far into the neighborhood. Even the future land use map, as you saw on the screen, doesn't show the rezoning going 300 to 400 feet into the neighborhood. It goes one lot in, which would be about 80 to 120 feet. 2324 West 8th should have never even been allowed to be included in this request, as it goes too far in. The Planning Commission kept mentioning about a commercial corridor on Western. However, this proposal creates a commercial corridor on 8th Street. In my opinion, the Planning Commission did not do their due diligence in this case. Under the CO zoning, which we're now changing to, that question's been asked and answered in 2015. Planning Commission and the City Commission, as I understand it, agreed that the zoning just did not fit the neighborhood. In the comprehensive plan, Chapter 2, Goals and Guiding Principles, Item 6A states, identify measures to foster the stabilization of established neighborhoods. Allowing a developer to come into our established neighborhood, tear down houses that are still quite viable, and then put up several commercial buildings does nothing to foster stabilization of the established neighborhood. Remember, we're talking about 3 total properties here. Please do not focus on the single property primarily being discussed at 802 Southwestern. He wants to build an office for his wife, but what's going across the street? So far, we've not heard any plans. I've not seen any drawings. I've not heard any plans. At the Planning Commission, he said he didn't have a plan yet. So anyway, where are the rights and considerations for property owners who have lived in the area for 20, 30, or 40 years? Look at the property records for houses all up and down Western and the associated side streets. The majority of those properties have been owned by the same families for decades. There's very little turnover in our area. In staff's opinion, at the Planning Commission, staff commented, the proposed map amendment, in staff's opinion, would not impede or negatively impact the surrounding commercial uses. And when questioned by Mr. Shanahan about impacting residential lots, city staff's response was, we don't see this as a negative for residential because they would maintain the same access they have now because the street would be rebuilt. However, I argue it would be a negative for residential because we could no longer enjoy our property the same way we do today. Also noted during the Planning Commission was that engineering has plans to expand Western Road. I direct your attention to the Transportation Enhancement Plan, I believe adopted in 2006, and specifically call attention to Appendix A, Table A3, which shows short-term projects in the plan. Of those short-term projects, there are 9 projects, the majority of which have not been started yet. Western is one of those projects. At that time, it was for those 9 projects, it was going to cost $42 million. In today's dollars, that's probably about $54 million. If you look at the traffic counts that are available on the city's website, I think there are a lot higher priorities than 4-laning or 5-laning Western. Lakeview from Husband to Perkins comes to mind. That has a much higher traffic count. So the Planning Commission discussed the importance of walkability, and I would argue we already have that. Within one short half-mile walking distance of my house, I have 2 realtors' offices, 2 dry cleaners, 2 financial planners, 2 nail salons, a tanning salon, a daycare, family counseling services, 2 home health agencies, a physical therapy clinic, a float and wellness clinic, a tag agency, a cardiologist, 2 eye care practices, a dentist, martial arts academy, a dance studio, a 24-hour gym, an ATM, an auto detailer, an auto repair shop, the visitors bureau, a clothing boutique, a pizza joint, a liquor store, a gas station / convenience store / sandwich shop, a dispensary, 2 taco shops, an ice cream parlor / burger joint with an associated market stocking all kinds of fresh food, 7 insurance agencies, 4 hair salons, 2 veterinarians, 2 coffee shops, a sushi place, and there's probably a partridge in a pear tree somewhere out there. So what am I missing? What does city staff feel we need in our little neighborhood that we do not already have, and more importantly, that we don't want? At what point will someone stand up for those of us who have put down roots in this neighborhood and say enough? We don't need any additional commercial development in this neighborhood. I hope this evening that you will be that body to stand up for the homeowners, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. I have another one for Bill McLean, but I think you just filled online and then here. Okay, just make sure there wasn't another Bill McLean here. That's all I have for people that signed up for the public hearing. Anyone else expecting to speak? Thank you all for being here. We appreciate your comments. Lance, you want to come back up and let us know what the Planning Commission recommends on this item?
Sure. Let's see, the Planning Commission voted by a vote of 4-0 to 1 with 1 abstention to recommend approval.
And the Planning Commission considered a commercial shopping zoning, not an office zoning, correct?
That is exactly right, yes.
Councilors, any questions for Lance?
Does it change any of the process since they wanted to change now to commercial office? Or is it just?
Stays the same.
Stays the same.
Yes.
Well, what are the City Council's options at this point?
Let's see. You can deny the application. You can approve it. You can send it back to Planning Commission to be reconsidered, or you can table it to a certain date.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Councilors, any further questions for Lance? Is there discussion on the item? I bet there is.
I just want to say first to the community in the neighborhood, thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to come and talk with us. We've had certainly many emails from your neighborhood, and it's beneficial to hear from you all and understand how this is impacting you and all of those things. We've been, sometimes we do these things and we don't get contacted at all when we're making land use decisions, and sometimes we get a lot of feedback from the community, and this is certainly one where we've gotten a lot of feedback from the community. So thank you for the time. I know that it's hard stuff. They're navigating a process and all kinds of stuff when those signs go up, and I appreciate the work and diligence that you've put into that. All that being said, I feel honestly like our system is kind of letting this neighborhood down a little bit. I think there's so much, as I look at it from a planning perspective, there's so much development pressure on this particular part of our community as we look at, the potential for 6th Street to be changed soon by ODOT, as we look at the development that's been approved in terms of the housing additions that are going in at 32nd and Western, as we look at even smaller things like the corridor study that we're doing to look at multimodal options potentially around 9th that would potentially connect into this area. I think there's so much going on there in terms of development pressures that you do start to wonder, when is it going? When is that from a transportation perspective? When is Western going to have this pressure of or how will we route transportation in this area? I know it's something that we've talked about as a council multiple times in the southwest part of town, around Sanger and things like that, how we route traffic in this community, and we have more traffic coming with those larger residential developments happening. And as I look at that, when we look at a rezone of an area of a property that's next to a residential parcel, my preference as a planning professional would be to have a planned unit, to be requiring a planned unit development, a PUD, in these areas. It really gives the residents, I think, an opportunity to have some feedback. A PUD would allow them to see the development, to have a wider range of people talking to the developer and kind of helping make those decisions. I think right now I look at that parcel and think, if office development was done well there, it could potentially buffer this area from additional growth and pressures. But they don't have the benefit of having a requirement that it's done well, right? If we rezone, it is what it is. And I talking to the developer, I think he has good intentions, but that doesn't necessarily always follow to good development, and we don't really have the tools, I don't feel like, in this instance to kind of compel that kind of review and conversation with the community on what might constitute good development here. And I feel like we've disappointed you in that regard. I wish that we had a better tool to have this conversation, because I really do think it's possible, given all of those other pressures, that having office here could be a good buffer to the rest of that neighborhood if it was done well.
Lance, do you have the planning map or the zoning map handy?
Yes.
Because I feel like, isn't there a PUD across the street? One of those other offices on the east side of
There is. It's right here.
And
Not
then
sure.
Remind me about the salon at 12th and Western. Was that just straight office or was that PUD?
It's straight office. Yeah.
My understanding from the code, Lance, is that there's, right now in our development code, that it's developer initiated. A PUD would be developer initiated. We don't have anything in our land code that compels a developer to complete a PUD. And certainly, to be fair to a developer, a PUD is kind of front loads a lot of the effort of development in terms of doing some additional site planning at the beginning, to kind of start those conversations with the community and kind of for us to review as a city. But am I correct?
Yes.
Did I interpret that?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Correctly?
Yes.
So it wouldn't be an option or is it an option to send it back to Planning Commission for consideration that way if we're not?
I don't know if we could make that suggestion. We could always remand it for consideration of office zoning instead of commercial shopping. with the suggestion that a PUD is explored. I don't know
I
that we
I
can-
feel like listening to, again, it's listening to the developer, it sounds like there's good intentions and that he wants it to be a quality development, that he wants to contribute to the fabric of the community here, that he wants it to be, you know, something in keeping and scale. I've seen some of the renderings. But I think the challenge, as we've seen from, you know, emails from the community in the neighborhood, it's just a zoning classification. They haven't had the chance to kind of review all of these things, to have input on some of those things, and to really fine tune what that might look like for their neighborhood. And I think moving forward, we should, as a council, outside of this particular issue, consider this for properties that are coming in as commercial next to residential. We should be providing our neighborhoods and our strong, special neighborhoods the opportunity to just have a bigger conversation, I think, probably.
I did hear, I mean, as people were talking, one of the individuals said they were kind of thrown off guard because they had changed from commercial shopping down to commercial office. And so I do wonder if either sending back to Planning Commission or tabling it so that people can give feedback on the idea of office versus shopping might be a possibility.
And I think this particular developer, we have the luxury of this individual growing up in Stillwater, whereas other developers come in and don't have that sense of pride and sense of wanting to reach out to the neighborhoods and have conversations. And so I think in this instance, I think that would be a very positive thing that could happen. And I think the developer would be willing to do that. And I think that's important in this case.
Does the remanding of the case affect the timeline in terms of application? I mean, it just kind of keeps everything going the way it is, right? It doesn't trigger the moratorium or anything like that?
Yes, I don't believe so, because that technically wouldn't be a reapplication.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to make a couple of general comments about zoning and this case in particular. One, it's nice to talk about city council issues like zoning instead of public health issues. This used to be all we did. And I will echo Councilor Jalowski's statement that I certainly understand from a neighborhood perspective that this feels like a huge encroachment, and I certainly do understand those feelings and those thoughts. This is a street that I rode my bike down from my house to get to the university or to get downtown. We rode down Western, and when I rode it as a kid, you know, there was a lot of fields and a lot of houses. And since then, we've got Fountain Square, we've got the offices on the east side of the road, closer to 6th. We've got the salon at 12th on the east side as well. And so it has changed a little bit over that time frame. And we also have a comprehensive plan that talks about this being commercial in some ways. I think it's important to remember, for one thing, that these kinds of changes or these kinds of options are not something that the city initiates. We don't go to people and say, you should turn this into commercial. Even from a comprehensive plan, when the city puts together a comprehensive plan, it's a group of citizens that gather together and look at the city and look at land use in the city and say, what do we as a group of community citizens feel is the best way to organize land use in our community? It's not something that the city council or that the city staff says this is what we think should be there. It's an attempt to, as a community, say what is the best way to organize the way we use our land in this city. Zoning in and of itself is an odd thing, because basically what we're telling you as private property owners is there's certain ways you can use your property and there's certain ways you can't. It's a little bit un-American in some ways, and zoning is very closely watched in terms of how we do it as a city. There are certain rules we have to follow because we are telling you as a private property owner, the property owner that came and bought these parcels, sorry, there's certain things you can do and there's certain things you can't do with the property that you own. That's important. We have to do that as a city, right? We don't want somebody to come in and build a concrete plant right next to your house. Nobody would want that, and so we have these things in place to try to mitigate that as much as we can. But we also have this long-term plan where we as a community sat down in, when was the comp plan adopted? 2013. And that group of community citizens, before any of us was on the council, said this is what we see the future of this neighborhood looking like, or this street. And so developers or property owners that have bought property in that area, they've seen that, or they have the opportunity to see that and to understand what the community feels is the future of this property. So I'm just trying to make the point that there are valid ways of looking at both of these things, right? This isn't, I think from a developer standpoint, not a terrible, terribly out of kind of a crazy way to think and say, hey, if I buy this property in the long-term plan, it's supposed to be commercial, this seems like a good use. It's a valid position for him to take, and I understand also from the neighborhood's perspective. And so what we really would like to be able to do from a council perspective is to come together as a community and come together as a neighborhood and a developer and say, how can we figure this out in a way that takes into account everybody's interests as much as we possibly can. Planned unit developments are a good way to do that. We had a big discussion several years ago on 12th Street about a neighborhood that didn't want to see some commercial development coming in, and a planned unit development was adopted in that area, and at least not everyone was happy, but at least some more people were comfortable with what actually happened. So I think there is, and again, I've discussed with the developer too and with some of the neighbors. I think watching the Planning Commission meeting, there seemed to be more interest in the idea of office, or hey, if this was a nice looking office that we knew what it was going to look like and we knew that it was going to be buffered and we knew it was going to be landscaped, then maybe we feel a little bit more comfortable about it. So I would, having said all that, I think there is some value in saying, we could remand this back to the Planning Commission, ask them to consider an office zoning district instead of a commercial shopping zoning district, and at the same time suggest to the developer perhaps pursuing a planned unit development or some kind of more being able to give the neighbors some more comfort about what's going to be built here. Now the problem from our standpoint, and I said this before at some point, we can't do that unless with a planned unit development we can consider what's going in and you can consider what's going in, but if it's just a straight zoning, we can't consider any of that either. Right? So if he says, I'm going to put it in office, anything that's legally permitted in an office can go in there. And there's nothing, once the zoning is changed, there's nothing that we can do about that. So it makes some sense to try to figure out a mutually agreeable solution here. So I don't know if other people have other thoughts, but I think while I don't like prolonging this situation for anybody. I know it's already been a long time that the developers have been working on plans, that you all have been dealing with this. I think there would be some value in going back, having another discussion at the Planning Commission, and perhaps seeing what other options might be available to find some common ground with the neighbors in the neighborhood. I think we would need a motion to remand it to Planning Commission. Do we have to set a date at the Planning Commission, or will they just go on their next available agenda?
It would go on the next available agenda.
Is there a motion to that effect?
Motion to remand to the Planning Commission.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to remand this item to the Planning Commission for discussion of an office zoning. Any further discussion, councilors? Please vote. With a vote of 4-0 with one abstention, that item passes, and this will be remanded to the Planning Commission. Thank you again for you all being here and for providing your comments. And to everyone else who sent emails and couldn't be here tonight, we read all those and took them into account as well. And I got to figure out what I did with my agenda. Item 6B, receive public comment regarding a request for a specific use permit for a medical marijuana processor for property located at 1930 North Dardo Road, CC-21-184. Ms. Carlin, did we have good notice on this item?
Yes, we do.
Thank you. Lance.
Okay. The specific use permit coming up is for a medical marijuana processor. The hatch pattern indicates the site in question, and it's on the west side of Dardo and just north of Sunrise. This is a view looking to the north. You can see Dardo running north and south, and the red polygon indicates the site. And this is currently it's a grow facility in part of this building, and the processing use is what's being requested. So this is a view from Dardo. And this is the zoning map showing that it's currently light industrial, IL. There's RSS to the west, CG, commercial general, to the south, and it's actually the county to the east. Any questions?
Councilors? Thank you, Lance. At this point, I'll open the public hearing. Do we have a representative from the
Yes,
owner
that's
here?
me.
Hello.
Hi, good evening, councilors. My name is Katie Purdy, and I'm with Ghost & Associates at 113 East 8th Ave. We are here seeking approval for the specific use permit to operate a medical marijuana processing facility on the property in 1930 North Dardo. The staff report is comprehensive and provides all the base information. The request is being made to allow the business to perform cold water extraction on site. The building already has a SUP for a medical grow house. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Thank you so much. Councilors, any questions? I don't know if I opened the public hearing before that, but I will open the public hearing now. I don't have anyone signed up to speak at the public hearing, so I'll close the public hearing, and I'll ask Lance to come back up and let us know what the Planning Commission recommends.
The Planning Commission voted 4-0 to recommend approval.
Thank you, sir. Councilors, any questions, comments, or is there a motion on this item?
Motion to accept Planning Commission recommendation and approve the specific use permit for the property located at 1930 North Dardo Road.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the specific use permit. Please vote. With a vote of 4-1, with Councilor Wedlake voting no, that item passes. Item 6C, receive public comment regarding a request for a specific use permit for a medical marijuana dispensary for property located at 520 South Dardo Road. CC-21-189. Kimberly, do we have good notice?
Yes, we do.
Lance?
Great. Only 2 more to go. Let's see, the SUP 20-10 is located on the northwest corner of 6th and Dardo. This is an aerial view looking to the north. The street view is from Dardo. This is actually a permitted, licensed dispensary previously, but I believe it's changed owners, so therefore they needed to get a new SUP. This is the zoning map. You can see that it's completely surrounded by CG, commercial general. RSL, residential small lot, is located, large lot is located to the north. Any questions?
Thank you, Lance. I'll open the public hearing. Do we have the same representative here to speak?
Katie Purdy, Ghost & Associates, 113 East 8th Ave. We are seeking approval of the SUP to operate a medical marijuana dispensary. As Lance said, it has previously been zoned as an SUP for a dispensary, but has changed owners, so it's the same spot, just different owners. So I guess that's all I have if you have any questions for me.
Councilors? Thank you. I don't have anyone else signed up to speak, so I'll close the public hearing. Lance, what's the Planning Commission's recommendation?
Planning Commission made a recommendation, and they voted 4-0 for approval.
Thank you, Lance. Councilors?
Motion to accept Planning Commission's recommendation and approve the specific use permit for the property located at 520 South Dardo Road.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the specific use permit. Please vote. With a vote of 4-1, with Councilor Wedlake voting against, that item is approved. Item 6D, receive public comment regarding a request for a specific use permit for a medical marijuana dispensary for property located at 1023 East 6th Avenue, CC-21-185. Ms. Carnley? Good
Yes,
notice?
we have good notice.
Thank you. Lance?
Yes. Let's see, SUP 21-08 is located south of 6th Avenue, and it's just to the east of Perkins. This is an aerial view looking to the northwest. You can see 6th Avenue up here. The purple polygon indicates the subject site. And this is a view from, from 6th. It's the former gas station. This is the zoning map, and it's surrounded by CG Commercial General on 3 sides, and RSS to the south. Any questions?
Thank you, Lance. At this time, I'll open the public hearing. Do we have a representative here from this one? I'm sorry? Okay. Do you have anything you'd like to add? Thank you. Lance, at this time I'll close the public hearing. I don't have anyone else signed up. What was the Planning Commission's recommendation, Lance?
The Planning Commission voted 4-0 to recommend approval.
Thank you, sir. Councilors?
Motion to accept Planning Commission recommendation and approve the specific use permit for the property located at 1023 East 6th Avenue.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. With a vote of 4-1, with Councilor Wedlake voting against, that item is approved. That takes us to item 7 on the agenda, general orders. First up, item A is presentation of a public art proposal for Gateway Project at 6th Avenue and Western Road.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. Becky Taylor, Chief Civic Innovation Officer. The Gateway Project is truly a citizen-driven project with the goal of bringing public art to Stillwater, and a project of which I hope is the first of many. The northeast corner of 6th and Western is a gateway into our community. Most of us have probably driven past it at least once a day. The corner was generously donated to the city by the Pattons with the goal of welcoming people into our community. A few citizens had the desire to place public art on this corner, and thus the Gateway Project is a result of both the Pattons' wish to welcome people to the city, as well as the citizens' desire to beautify that space. This has been a lengthy and inclusive process to get to the recommendation that I'm bringing forward to you today. The city partnered with the Arts and Humanities Council of Stillwater for this entire process. Together, we put together a diverse search committee of 12 people, many of whom are here this evening. You want to wave, committee? Yeah, there's a few of them. And these members of the search committee, they ranged in age of, we had a few high school students all the way to someone in their 80s. They are business owners, artists, people who are not at all artistic, but like beautiful things. And collectively, a group of people that hold a wide range of perspectives of what beautiful art looks like. An RFP was released widely, and Vicki Berry, director of the OSU Museum of Art, helped a lot in this process to ensure the RFP was widely distributed. Once the deadline passed and the proposals were received, there was a community engagement effort and then a selection committee of 4 stakeholders. In total, 16 proposals from 12 different artists from across the globe were received. We had a submission from Canada, from South Korea, and Poland, as well as submissions from local artists. As you can see in the photos, we had a wide variety of sculptures that were proposed for our Gateway project. The search committee reviewed each proposal individually using a shared rubric and then met to narrow down the art proposals to the top 3. And as you can see on the screen, the top 3 proposals were Community Circle, which was sculpture number 1. Sculpture number 2 is Interlaced, and sculpture number 3, All Together. And interestingly, all 3 sculptures were from artists that live here in Stillwater. Once the search committee narrowed down the proposals to the top 3, the next phase was to find out which sculpture the community wanted on this prominent corner. Pictures of all 3, along with the artist statements, were placed at the library, and also an online survey was widely dispersed. A total of 140 votes were received at the library, and 60% of them voted for sculpture 2. And over 1,000 votes were received through the online survey, and 70% of them voted on sculpture 2. The selection committee, consisting of 4 people, our city manager, Mr. McNichol, Rebecca Breenan, the president of Arts and Humanities Council of Stillwater, Christine Waits, a community member and early advocate for this project, and Barry Patton, the son of Dr. Patton, who donated this corner to the city, were all on the selection committee. The selection committee reviewed the search committee recommendation and also the results of the community member survey and agreed that based on this feedback, Sculpture 2 is the best option for the corner of 6th and Western. The Arts and Humanities Council of Stillwater is fundraising for this sculpture. To date, they have raised $35,000 of the $55,000 needed. The city will get the site ready for the sculpture, and after meeting with the internal team, we anticipate it costing anywhere between $50,000 to $100,000 in engineering costs, surveying, electrical, and concrete work. The sculpture will take 6 to 9 months to build, so we have some time to get the site ready, and we'll return with the appropriate budget amendments when appropriate. And also, we've met with the city's engineering team, and the sculpture will be placed appropriately on the corner so the upcoming changes ODOT is making to 6th Street will not interfere with the placement of the art. I love that the sculpture our community chose was from a local artist. His name is Morgan Robinson. Morgan grew up in Stillwater. He went to school in Perkins and Ripley and currently has a studio in Stillwater, all while his art is displayed in galleries across the country. And he wrote this about his sculpture. This sculpture, Interlace, is a tangible celebration of Stillwater, an idea that no matter where we come from or where the future takes us, we will all be tied together in the lively community of Stillwater. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I'm sure the search committee would be happy to answer any questions as well.
Thank you, Becky. Counselors?
From one of the city councilors who is also not the least bit artistic but loves art, I love this, and I'd just like to thank the committee that worked on this. And I would also ask where one can make donations.
Oh, great question. So you can make donation Arts and Humanities Council website, which is, Rebecca? Oh, thank you. Artstillwater.us. I should have had that on there. Thank you, Mike.
I really commend this effort and thank the committee that worked on this. Embarking on a public art project is very challenging. Everyone's opinions on what is beautiful and special can be very, very different. And so it can be hard to kind of come into an agreement and find something that we think is fitting for our community. And I'm really grateful for the work that you did to include the community and solicit a wide range with your RFP. I think that really honors our community, makes sure that we have something that's really unique and special to our community. I've had the opportunity to do a lot of work in Oklahoma City, who has had a big public art initiative, and there's been all kinds of studies showing just the economic benefit of investing in our community in this way and beautifying. I know it can sometimes maybe seem frivolous to have something just for beauty's sake, but I think there's lots of studies that show when we invest in our community this way, others choose to invest with us. So thank you.
And a great way to honor John and Nancy Patton. So thank you for including their son Barry in on this. They were a lover of food and art themselves, and so I think they would both be very pleased that this was the choice.
It's great.
Absolutely. Awesome work. I'm glad you got so many responses.
Yes, we
quite
did.
a few responses to
It was
this
good.
survey.
And I have a recommendation when you were
Let's
ready.
hear it.
Okay, so recommendation to accept the recommendation of the selection committee of Interlaced Sculpture 2, which will become a gateway piece on the corner of 6th Avenue and Western Road.
Counselors?
This was loaded as a presentation, and it actually doesn't require.
Yep. Good point. We don't need a motion.
Okay.
We don't have an action item on the agenda for this. I'm not sure we need to take an action on it, but we'll double check. And if
All
we
right.
need to, we'll put it on the next one.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your work. Next up on 7B is a little bit of housekeeping because I messed up last week. I did not bring my notes. I left my notes for nominations last week in my office, and I made the mistake of relying on my memory. That's always a problem. So at this point, I need to make a motion to reconsider the September 13th, 2021 Planning Commission appointments so that I can correct that mistake. So I'll make that motion.
Second.
A motion and a second to reconsider those appointments. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0. We will now reconsider the planning commission appointments. We do have 2 open seats and 1 renewal, so I would like to nominate Mike Shanahan to have to start a new term on the planning commission, and then to nominate Steve Hallgren and Mark Prather to fill the 2 open seats on the planning commission. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second on these appointments. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, Mark, Steve, and Mike are appointed to Planning Commission. I apologize for the confusion caused by my mistake, and I appreciate you guys helping me fix it. All right, that takes us to 7C, COVID-19 update and discussion, to include discussion of a possible ordinance to require face coverings. No action will be taken on this item. I will give a quick update just on the situation as it stands. We previously had an emergency order that went into place on September 2nd due to the situation at the hospital and upcoming events in town. They, part of that, the State Department of Health put some tents up to help with overflow out of the ER in case they were needed. There were some use of those, but thankfully those last couple of weekends were relatively quiet, even compared to pre-COVID, which is great. So those actually came down on Friday. And then at 12 o'clock this morning, that emergency proclamation expired, which I went ahead and let expire, given the improvement in the numbers at the hospital. When I say improvement in the numbers at the hospital, I mean that they're not busting at the seams with 5 to 6 to 12 people waiting in the ER for rooms in the main hospital. The ICU is still full. There were, I can't remember, 10 maybe beds, general med beds available on the report this morning, which is good. It's certainly better, but it's not great. And hopefully we'll see a continued reduction in the numbers of patients at Stillwater Medical Center. I think that's all I have in terms of updates. We did have a couple of counselors who wanted to discuss the possible mask ordinance, so I'll turn it over to Councilor Wedlake to lead that discussion.
Yeah. So to kind of echo what the mayor said, certainly as somebody that's been following trends for a long time now, our trends are kind of headed in a positive direction, and we pray that those trends continue. Also, like the mayor said, our numbers are not good by any means at this point, but they are trending positively. And so we'll continue our diligent watch as we see what happens in the coming days and weeks. I did want to put on this item on the agenda today to discuss the possibility of a draft mask ordinance for a few reasons. One, we don't know what the fall is going to bring for us as it relates to COVID. I pray every morning that our trends as they are right now continue and that we don't have to have this discussion ever again. I, much like you, I'm sure, are pretty tired about talking about masks. I don't know how you guys feel, but I would imagine it's congruent with that. But be that as it may, with the unknown of what's coming up in fall, I think that it was a good idea to have this on the agenda to at least discuss what an ordinance might look like and hope to God that we never have to use it. I am of the ilk that it's better to be prepared than not. So that was one of the reasons that I wanted to have this on the agenda tonight, so that we could have a draft ready to go and hope that we never have to use it, but have one that's ready in case that we do. I think I'll pause there for a minute. I've got more to say, but I'll parlay those comments for a moment.
I also think it's important that we have the conversation. We've received a lot of correspondence from our community, not just this week when this came on to the agenda, but previously encouraging us to consider a mask mandate. I think it's hard for me to continually get those emails and then just not be having a conversation up here, regardless of what the outcome of that conversation is. I think we need to have a public conversation so that our community can come and talk and share their thoughts on it, and that we can kind of talk together, since we're not really able to do that outside of this space. So I think it's a good opportunity for us to check in, to understand what the different dynamics are in our community right now. Currently, it's been a complicated summer with the governor's and our state legislature's decisions on legislation kind of prohibiting schools and our universities from having mask requirements. That's been kind of something we have to think about from a legal perspective here as a city council. So I think there's been some legal action on that in the last couple of weeks. So understanding kind of where that might put us in terms of what this looks like. I think also, we have had this kind of gush of action where we did have an emergency declaration. We did have tents at our hospitals. We did have consistent daily reports from our hospitals that they were full and overfull at that. But we also have seen recently that the cases have been going down and that the hospitalizations have been slightly less. So, and as a mama watching the school cases as well, we went through a crazy hectic first couple of weeks where our kids were getting close contacted, and there was a lot of children in our school system that were going into isolation. And I think that also appears as I think Mr. Bobo showed us is kind of trending down as well. I think he shared that he thought that was attributed to their expectation of masking, but I think all those things are just kind of things for us to consider. I think the other thing that I've looked at recently and that I worry about with a mask requirement here is, we saw this with the Delta variant. We saw this rush of cases, like a really steep incline of cases. How do we stay ahead of that if we think that's coming again? I feel like, right, a mask requirement may have prevented and helped that at a time when we maybe weren't able to do it, but it's like, how do we stay ahead of this? How do we think ahead for our community, find practical and implementable ways to support community and public health here in Stillwater?
I think as I was thinking about this, I would have been one of the community members that emailed the council and said I'm all for a mask mandate. As a community member, I think whatever we can do to help our hospital, to help our healthcare workers, to lower that the rush they've had and the strain it's put on them is a good thing. That said, I know we're in a much different situation than we were a year ago. Again, with the legislation that got passed this summer, we know OSU can't mandate masks on campus. Last year we were having football games that had 25% capacity, and now we have 100% capacity. And when you watch the cameras zoom around the stadium, you see there's not a lot of masks. And so I do think I'm glad that we're looking at an ordinance so that we can be prepared if needed. I do think it presents some different challenges than a year ago in terms of enforcement.
I agree. As I thought about this also, a year ago, we didn't have a vaccine. We didn't know a lot. We wanted to make sure we protected our community, and a mask mandate seemed to be the right decision at that time. Fast forward to another year, and we have a vaccine. We have some decisions, different choices people can make. A year ago, we were able to kind of all get together and do this as a community to do that. And this year, we don't have that ability to do that for reasons already stated. I do want to keep the conversation going, but in my mind, I think the council needs to be able to do mandates and things that will truly protect our community and do it in a successful way. And I hope we can continue to have these conversations and figure out what those things might be to make something successful to protect our community. But I also want to be able to do it in something that's a reality of having done. I don't think at this point, passing a mask mandate, I don't know how we would enforce it.
I find the policy right now of this policy making of this very challenging right now. I think one thing that I've been proud of is we've been following public health guidance from CDC. We've been following public health guidance from our county health, right? None of us, maybe with the exception of Dr. Wedlake, this is not our area of expertise. And I think if we listen to them, they would say adding this mitigation measure is a good thing to do. I think developing policy around that right now is very hard. I think this is the first thing I can think of that we've had like this where it's hard to make policy that seems effective and impactful and all those things.
And I also think that, as last year, again, we were all kind of in lockstep, and in addition to all the entities in Stillwater being in lockstep, Oklahoma City had a mask mandate, Tulsa had a mask mandate, Norman had a mask mandate. Even if you wanted to get out of town and get away from the mandate, you were going somewhere that you were also going to be required to wear a mask, and I think that also makes it a little bit more of a challenge to do that in isolation.
Yeah, it's tough. Your parents when you're little, right? They said just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean right, but it's hard.
Right.
I think if somebody asked me what our public health professionals are telling us, they would say layer the mitigation, put a mask on for now in public, big crowded public spaces.
Yep.
I would also say, as an aside, but also to this, I had several people email me regarding the neighborhood issue that we had in front of us tonight that did not feel comfortable coming to our council chambers because we do not have a mask requirement in council chambers. That's deeply concerning to me that people in our community would not feel able, from a public health perspective, to participate in our public process.
Which is important, because if we had the ability to teleconference, that would be one thing.
Right.
It wouldn't be as much of an issue. But when we're talking about people that are not able to take an active part in our legislative processes here at the city, that's a problem. That's a concern. With regards to the universal enforcement of masking and ensuring that we get as many people on board with this as we can, I understand that those concerns that if we don't have everybody masking that it's not as effective, and certainly early data seem to kind of mirror that thinking. As I've referenced before, and I'll kind of reference something that Mr. Smith said earlier, speaking about facts. The reason that CDC recommendations change is not because we're trying to fool you. It's because we learn new things. That's how the scientific process works. You learn new things and you change your recommendations to follow the data that you have available to you at that time. With regards to his study that I referenced last week, the Bangladesh mass study, while not without its flaws, certainly, still represents the best prospective data we have looking at this question regarding SARS-CoV-2 mitigation and masking. And I'll just throw this out there. When you sit down and crunch those data, out of 342,000 people, roughly, mask use went up from 14% to roughly 42%, and saw a 29% decline in SARS-CoV-2 symptoms and COVID-19 symptoms, and seroconversion to COVID-19. So it appears, now this is a preprint document, has not been peer-reviewed, as Mr. Smith correctly stated, but those data seem to hold pretty firm, and that a little bit of increase in mass does seem to make a clinical difference. If we're talking about 29% of the 28 people we had in COVID in the hospital 2 weeks ago, that's a fair amount of people. So there is a clinical significance there that is something that we can't really ignore, despite the fact that masking was not universal, and in fact not even 50%, not even half the people wore masks. And despite that fact, they saw a statistically significant difference in those communities that masked versus those communities that did not. So again, I mean, that's an important piece to this puzzle. If we're concerned about the universality of masking, it doesn't appear that we have to have that. And that's another reason that I didn't get into earlier about why I wanted to discuss this. Because, again, with new data, we are obligated as scientists to change recommendations as we learn things. My question on this specifically, kind of going to a legal question, however, with regards to the previous mandate that we had, educational institutions were included in that. What is the legality of that now? I mean, I don't, honestly, and this is something maybe nobody can answer. I'm not sure anybody has an answer to this. But I certainly, the reason I bring this up is because I would love to see masks in schools. Again, there's no argument at this point that masks are helpful, but I don't know that we as the city council have that purview available to us right now.
Certainly, the legal landscape regarding mask mandates specifically applied to schools is constantly changing. The current litigation that challenges Senate Bill 658 regarding mask mandates for schools is ongoing, so what the outcome of that would be is unclear. So at this time, the recommendation was to include in the working draft the educational institutions because it mirrors the language that was previously passed. And the recommendation would be to continue to watch what happens, and as we move towards a first and a second reading, to make adjustments based on what our position would be at that time.
Yeah.
And as I understand it, the Senate bill, or the injunction against the bill applies to Common Ed, K through 12, but not higher ed.
Right.
That's correct.
Well, and there's another legal precedent, even outside of Senate Bill 658, governing institutions of higher learning.
Yeah, our previous ordinance didn't include OSU in it in the first place, right? Because we knew at that point it wasn't we didn't have.
I think the law is clearer there about our our ability to regulate things at OSU. But
we did get an updated draft today that fixed the date. The end date was February 31st, which I've never experienced. So I'm glad we moved that to February 28th. But otherwise, this is in terms of the rules in this draft ordinance, they are basically the same as we had from July through May of 2020 to 2021. I will address a couple of comments. One from Mr. Flack that this is a non-mandate mandate, which is absolutely true. There's no penalty. There was never a penalty in this ordinance the first time we passed it. No one got a ticket. No one was arrested for not wearing a mask. No business was fined. So there were no penalty provisions to this ordinance, and there wouldn't be this time around. It would be the same rule. And of course, businesses and places of public accommodation have the ability to enforce it themselves on their facilities. And if they want you to leave, you have to leave. That's how it works now, including what the rules are right now. If there's a business that wants you to wear a mask and you don't, they can ask you to leave. So that wouldn't be changed under this ordinance either. I would also just add that I think what Dr. Wedlake said earlier in this kind of discussion at this point is the situation is a lot different from a legal perspective, from a public health perspective, just in terms of what we have in vaccines and all that sort of thing. My comments in July, I think we all kind of felt the same way. We were as a community coming together with Meridian, with the public schools, with the university, and all saying we're going to listen to public health, we're going to listen to the hospital, and we're going to pass and enforce these to the extent that we can. That becomes a lot more difficult now. I agree, Dr. Wedlake, that any number of additional masks is a good thing, and that was a part of our discussion back then, which was we need to increase the number of people in the community wearing a mask in order to decrease the spread of COVID-19. And if this gets us 10%, 20%, 30% more people wearing masks in public situations, that's a good thing. It's not going to get 100. We're not going to, we're never going to get to 100% compliance with something like this, just like we don't with seatbelt laws or any of the other things we pass. But increasing the incidence of use here is a good thing, and we want to do that. Now, it becomes problematic with passing ordinances, and for all the reasons you guys have said, and I think, given where we are right now, it's best to kind of keep this in our pocket. And, spoken with some folks at the school district, they do feel like they have another level that they can go up. They're currently at expecting masks, but under current legalities with 658, they feel like they can move up to a requirement based on what they've seen in other places. But given where their numbers are, I don't think they're going to do that right away. But if they need to, they do have some room to move there, and that, I think, would make sense, for us to stay in contact with the school district and sort of see where they're going. I think the university has also got some arguments to be made about whether they have to be subject to what the governor tells them to do or not. And I think they also feel like if they do have to implement additional rules, they will do what they need to do to keep students in school. And that's everybody's goal at this point. I think at Stillwater Public Schools and at the university is in-person classes is absolutely the best thing for students. And if we have to go to mass to do that, then we will, they will move that direction. I think we as a city should be ready to support them and to come alongside if those changes are made in those institutions. As it stands, there is a resolution on the books from the Stillwater City Council from August 2nd. Is that when we passed that resolution? August something? Maybe?
Maybe.
Where we very strongly recommend that everyone in this community wear a mask when they're in public around other people, regardless of whether you're vaccinated or not. It absolutely helps stop the spread of COVID. There's not a whole lot of argument to be made about it from the consensus medical opinion, and we really would appreciate it if you would. It will help keep our hospital able to treat patients, not just COVID patients, but people who come in with a heart attack or with other sorts of things. It's an act in cooperation with and in support of the community that you live in, and it absolutely helps, and we strongly urge that you do it. Other than the comments I made about the date, any other changes that you'd like to see in this draft ordinance in terms of what we would potentially have ready to act on if we feel the need to do so?
I don't know what the possibility of this is, but even just your statement a second ago, Mayor, about, encouraging mask use right now, I think it's really hard when we're talking about this. It was so nice to not wear a mask when the CDC was not recommending that we wear masks. And I think
for vaccinated people.
Just for vaccinated people, thank you. I think it's so important that we talk about what is triggering those layers of mitigation, right? So the CDC's currently, our public health professionals are telling us to wear a mask when our community transmission levels are high. I think are we like a step beyond high right now, like severe or something? But I think it would be great if we could somehow, instead of just having a random date, if we could somehow tie it or consider tying it to transmission levels, so that if we do see transmission levels dip, we don't have to wear a mask. And I think, I think I shared at another meeting, we will likely, right, our scientists are telling us, we will probably see some hills and valleys as we're trying to land this plane. And so how do we encourage, mask wearing when at a time when transmission is high, and then also encourage people to take them off when we don't need them based on public health.
Yeah, I think that's the underlying concept there is an important thing to note here is that, I look at this in the same way that I look at treating neurological disease, right? You always want to use the least invasive treatment that you can. At this point, masks are a lot less invasive than doing things like shutdowns and mandating that businesses close and all that. All the things that none of us ever want to do. This is the path of least resistance. And so, in thinking about the most efficacious way to do this in the least disruptive way, this is the best answer right now. And so I like the idea of tying this to some kind of clinical metric. You know, the difficult thing about that is that percent positivity numbers don't always paint the full picture. Is that because we're testing less? Is that because our, you know, percent positives are actually more because more people are getting, you know, there are pockets in those data. And tying it to a hospital metric, which I tend to be the advocate of, but the problem with that is that by the time you're looking at things in the hospital, things on the outside of the hospital are already bad, right?
I think the CDC's recommendation is tied to their designation around areas that are high spread, severe spread.
It's community spread is
I don't know what, I'm not certain, I guess without looking at it, I know I've read it at some point, what constitutes community spread? Is that just percent positivity, or is there a larger set of metrics that goes into that
well, I think they make that designation. So we could tie it to just what the CDC's designation is for our community, I would think. I mean, we could look at that from a drafting standpoint about tying it to the CDC's designation for Payne County on whether it's high or severe or low or whatever, because they make that, they label it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that overcomplicates it, if that's a lot for people to track potentially, but it does seem like, I mean, I know, right? I mean, we all look forward to a day when we don't need to do this to help keep the vulnerable among us safe. But that, you know, according to the CDC right now, that's not the case. And so how do we help convey that? I think, you know, it's totally different, but, you know, we have ozone alerts and things that kind of help us gauge, you know, maybe what our activity might be on those days. Maybe something like, I mean, the CDC kind of already has it in there, right?
Yep.
They already have a system.
And I think the CDC's term is significant community spread right now.
Right now.
And Payne County and most of Oklahoma is in the highest bracket of that.
I thought we were a deeper red than when I looked at it last.
We can look at making that change to the draft ordinance to see if there's a way to tie it to a metric. Any other requested changes? Thoughts or comments on the item? We appreciate all of the feedback we've gotten. I don't know if I got quite as many emails as I did last year when we were doing all this, but I got a lot of emails, and I will say that the number of people in the community that seem to support masking remains very high, and we appreciate the folks that have weighed in on both sides of the issue, and we will keep this in our pocket for now and talk about what needs to happen next at a future meeting. All right, that takes us to item 8A, Resolution CC-2021-31. A resolution concerning the City of Stillwater's bridge inspection responsibility pursuant to National Bridge Inspection Standards and notification to the Oklahoma Department of Transportation of bridge inspection consultant selection for bridge inspection contractor commencing April 1st, 2022 through March 31st, 2024. I love the fact that as a member of the City Council, we get to jump from public health and mask ordinances to bridge inspection standards.
It's
So
got to
let
be
us know,
one of the most exciting jobs there is.
We're back to the part of city council meetings where I don't understand all the words. So, great.
Well, this is actually very simple. The federal government, Federal Highway Works Administration, a number of years ago, required that all bridges in the country be inspected a minimum of every 2 years. And that includes what they call the off-system bridges, which are the county and the city bridges. Now, the nice thing about this mandate is they pay for the inspections. So, and they give us the opportunity to hire from a list of pre-approved engineers to select to do the work for us. Or if we have somebody qualified on staff, we can do it ourselves. Or we can utilize the same bridge inspection consultant as Payne County is going to use, or we can let ODOT make the selection. Given our current workload, our staffing level, we simply don't have the time to go through the selection process. And so we're recommending that we utilize the same bridge inspected consultant that Payne County selects. I've been in contact with one of the county commissioners, and they haven't made the selection yet, but the ones on their list are certainly acceptable to us. That would be our recommendation to you.
Thank you, Monty. Councilors, any questions?
Monty, is the county going through a competitive bid process for their selection?
Well, of course, it's an engineering professional services. There's not a bid process. There are, I believe, 5 consultants that ODOT has deemed capable of doing this work. You interview those consultants, and then you pick the one you believe will do the best job for you and can provide the services.
Any further questions? Is there a motion on the resolution?
Motion to accept resolution CC 2021-31.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, resolution CC-2021-31 is adopted. Resolution CC-2021-32 is a resolution of the City of Stillwater adopting design and construction standards. Mr. Carnes.
So previously you adopted these standards. We've had discussions back and forth. It turns out there's a provision in the development code that says that you have to do this by resolution also. So nothing has changed. These are the same that you saw previously. We need you to approve the resolution.
And a couple clerical changes tonight. Councilors, any questions?
Motion to adopt resolution CC 2021-32.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution. Please vote. We vote of 5-0, resolution CC-21-32 is adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Monty. Ordinances on first read, 3482, an ordinance rezoning attractive land located at 522 North Perkins Road from CS Commercial Shopping to CG Commercial General District. Councilors, questions? This is from last week's meeting on the Perkins Road property.
Motion to advance ordinance number 3482 to second reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to advance the ordinance. Please vote. With a vote of 4-1 with Councilor Jaloski voting against, the ordinance is advanced to second read. On second read, we have 3481, an ordinance amending the Stillwater City Code by amending Chapter 23, Land Development Code, Article 16, Subdivision Preparation and Requirements, Division 2, Major Subdivisions, to amend Section 23-325, Preliminary Plat. Councilors?
Motion to adopt ordinance number 3481.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the ordinance. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, ordinance 3481 is now adopted. Reports from officers and boards. Ms. Carnley.
Nothing to report.
You sure?
Oh. I have a request for an executive session pursuant to 25 OS Section 307B1 of the Oklahoma Open Meeting Act for the purpose of confidential communication regarding the employment, appointment, promotion, demotion, disciplining, or resignation of Stillwater City Manager Norman McNichol.
Thank you so much. Mr. McNichol.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Stillwater Fire Department is holding a pinning ceremony to recognize Lieutenant Zach Miller's promotion to captain. The ceremony will be at 10 a.m. on Friday, September the 24th. Residents can watch the ceremony live on AT&T UVerse Channel 99, Suddenlink Channel 14, and the City of Stillwater's YouTube channel.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Vice Mayor.
Yes. If you are going to an OSU football game this weekend, take advantage of the free park and ride shuttle service downtown. Residents, student, alumni, and visitors are welcome to park for free in one of the 500-plus parking spaces downtown and take a shuttle straight to Boone Pickens Stadium. Passengers will be picked up at the 7th Avenue and Lewis Street bus stop. Shuttles start running 3 hours before kickoff and continue to run every 15 minutes throughout post-game. And if you don't want to have to deal with the traffic after the game, this is the smartest thing you can do. Do a little shopping before and after the game. It's a great, great service that's provided.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. Councilor Hawkins.
The last two Time Projects community meetings are this week. Join us at 6:30 p.m. tomorrow at the OSU Student Union Theater or at 6 p.m. on Thursday at Stillwater Junior High School. If you won't be able to attend a meeting in person, you can still share your input online. A virtual version of the meeting will be made available on speakup.stillwater.org soon.
Thank you. We would love to see folks come out to those public meetings and talk about public infrastructure projects and other things you'd like to see us invest in. So if you haven't been to one, please try to make one this week. Councilor Wedlake.
Yes, sir. The city will be holding a household hazardous waste collection event on Saturday, October 23rd from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Convenience Collection Center at 807 South Perkins Road. During this event, residents are encouraged to drop off virtually any household pollutants for free. Accepted items include oil-based paints, pesticides, herbicides, household cleaning products, pool chemicals, and more. If you have any questions about the event, contact Environmental Programs Manager Chris Franks at 405-533-8482. As somebody that recently moved, it is amazing how much you just gather over the years. And I had a whole shelf full of old, like, car detailing stuff, herbicides, and Roundup, all of it. I mean, more than any one house should have, honestly. So if you find yourself in the same position I was in, this can help you out. October 23rd.
Thank you so much. Councilor Jaloski.
Next week is Healthcare Professional Appreciation Week in Stillwater. Show our healthcare professionals that you appreciate them by putting out a white ribbon of hope, writing a thank you note, or sharing a kind message on social media. The city is also encouraging residents to become fully vaccinated against COVID-19 in an effort to safeguard our healthcare professionals and help save lives. Visit stillwater.org/sleevesup for a list of ways that you can show you care every single day of the week.
Excellent. Did you know that Stillwater Radio does a city council recap every Tuesday after a meeting? Tune in to the one-on-one podcast with Bill Van Ness to hear city councilors and city employees discuss what's happening in our community each week. You can also find previous episodes on stillwaterradio.net/podcasts.
I think I'm up tomorrow.
Is it your turn?
I was just checking. That's not me.
Good to know. All right, at this point, I will recess the city council meeting at item 12, before item 12, and we will go over and I will call to order the Stillwater Utilities Authority meeting for September 20th, 2021. On the consent docket, we have meeting minutes and a bid recommendation. Is there a motion on the consent docket?
Motion to approve the consent docket.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent docket. Please vote.
City Council, no, I'm praying. That's why the Lord directed me to come tonight. That people ask, I don't have an agenda, but I am praying that you can figure out a way to bring unity to our city.
Thank you, sir.
I don't know how you're going to do it, because I saw what happened tonight. That's how I'm praying, that you can be wise. James 1 says, "Every man counts for his trial, count what he will." But that's God's wisdom, he'll grant you. That's what I'm praying.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
The best thing you ever did was appoint me to the commission I applied.
With a vote of 5-0 on the consent docket is approved. Takes us to item 5, general orders. 5A, authorize the lease purchase of 7 new commercial refuse vehicles and 2 new roll-off refuse vehicles for $1.9 million. We're going to let Chris Knight tell us more about that.
Good evening, Chris Knight, Waste Management Director. The Waste Management Department operates under a buyback agreement with Carolina Environmentals Incorporation for commercial refuse vehicles and roll-off refuse vehicles. The agreement provides for an option to sell the trucks to Carolina Environmental Systems Corporation at established prices, provided that the vehicles meet the vendor's terms and conditions at the end of the 36-month warranty period. 7 commercial vehicles and 2 roll-off vehicles are approaching that time period. After conducting an extensive cost analysis, it is recommended to replace these 9 vehicles. The proposed new commercial and roll-off refuse vehicles have a complete 3-year warranty, which reduces repair costs and downtime. The quote submitted by United Engines to Oklahoma State Purchasing Contract SW197 meets all the critical vehicle specifications. The master equipment lease/purchase agreement with Bank of America for the purchase of the equipment sets annual payments at approximately $420,000 for 5 years with an option of early payoff in 3 years. The Waste Management Fund is projected to have adequate funding available for the lease payments. I do have a recommendation. Do you have any questions?
Trustees, any questions? What's your recommendation, Chris?
Authorize staff to lease purchase 7 new commercial refuse vehicles and 2 new roll-off refuse vehicles from United Engines at an initial purchase amount of $1,939,000 per Oklahoma State Purchasing Contract SW197. Authorize staff to enter into a buyback agreement with the option to sell the 9 new vehicles after 3 years. Authorize staff to exercise the buyback option for the 7 used commercial vehicles, 2 used roll-off vehicles. Authorize staff to utilize the funds received from Carolina Environmental to pay off the remaining balance of approximately $685,000 to Bank of America. Authorize the general manager to sign all appropriate documents.
It's quite a recommendation.
It was long.
Trustees?
Motion to accept staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the staff's recommendation on the purchase of these vehicles. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, that item's approved. Thank you, Chris. Any reports from the officers or board? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
A motion and a second to adjourn the SUA. Please vote. The vote of 5-0, Stillwater Utilities Authority meeting is now adjourned. This time I will call to order the September 20th, 2021 meeting of the Stillwater Economic Development Authority. On the consent docket, we have meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve consent docket?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent docket. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, the consent docket is approved. On general orders, we have budget amendments reflecting increased revenue for projected ad valorem tax collections, and Melissa Reams is here to tell us about them.
Good evening, trustees. Melissa Reams, Deputy City Manager, before you this evening with a few more housekeeping details that need to be taken care of. The first, I'm going to give you, this deals with all 3 of these items, these budget amendments, but I want to give you a brief overview, and this relates to our TIF number 3 collections. Those monies come into the city from the county treasurer, Carla Manning, and they're considered a special revenue fund. So they come into a fund dedicated to just that particular revenue stream. It is much like the hotel tax money that comes into the city. That is also a special revenue fund. From out of that fund, the only distributions that are going to be made are the refunds that go back to the taxing jurisdictions per the planning document. And then we're going to transfer over to SEDA into another separate fund there, monies to what I call into the operating fund of the TIF number 3. And out of that will come payments for projects, could be payments for professional services or administrative costs, and any kind of payments to the taxing jurisdictions that are still needed after the ones in Fund 290. So these 3 sets of budget amendments are going to set out budgets for the 2 funds, the Fund 290 and then the operating account fund. So the first amendment that you see before you is it is going to be a one-sided, if you will, entry, and we're going to move fund balance from 290, from the special revenue fund, and we're going to move that over. You'll see this in a little bit. We're going to move that over to the operating fund, which is in SEDA, and it's Fund 856. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have about that particular budget amendment.
Trustees? Okay. Give me this short, where's it coming from and where's it going?
It's coming from the Special Revenue Fund, and it's going to SEDA to the TIF number 3 operating
Okay.
account.
And that's 300,000 on this first one.
Correct.
Should we go ahead and vote on that, since it's a separate item?
Yes. Okay.
Trustees, further questions about item 3A, or I'm sorry, 5A? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve budget amendment reflecting increased revenue for projected ad valorem tax collections, allotting funding to facilitate payment of the apportioned increment to the affected tax jurisdictions, and transferring funds from the City of Stillwater Economic Development Authority to facilitate payment of project costs for FY 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the budget amendment. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, that budget amendment is approved. Item 5B.
I have to refresh my memory here. So, there are two budget amendments, and this is all within the Special Revenue Fund, because we've got to have budget in the Special Revenue Fund so that we can receive income in and we can spend it. The first of two is the revenue side, and I tried to mark that clearly for you all. And we are anticipating this year that we will collect $850,000 in what I call current year taxes, which would be property taxes for calendar year 21. Now, we may collect those in January and February as well, but we're calling that calendar year 21. And then our wonderful county treasurer, she is so diligent, she collects the back taxes for us. So even though we've got some delinquencies at this point, I am anticipating that she might collect another $50,000 from calendar year 19 and calendar year 20. We have, between the 2 years, we have about a 6% shortfall between budget versus the actual collections. So that's the revenue side. And then on the expenditure side, we anticipate that we will spend $300,000 in refunds back to the taxing jurisdictions per the project plan. Mm-hmm. Because if it is indirect participation, participation, I think is the word. They all participate in a certain level, and so that they get some of the money back sooner than they would otherwise. And then we're going to transfer out to the operating account, 856, $600,000. So you can see the revenue and the expenditure totals are in balance. Yay, we love double entry accounting. Okay, so that's that set of entries. And so that's all going to happen in the special revenue account.
And that's 5B.
Mm-hmm.
Trustees, questions about these budget amendments?
So I'm noticing the language is exactly the same. Do we need to do anything to distinguish that?
On the motion, you mean?
Yes. Councilor Jaloski, this really is, if I could have put it all in one big journal entry, I would have.
Yeah.
And so in trying to describe this all is one big related journal entry, or one big budget amendment.
Yeah.
So I think it would be sufficient to add the amounts of the budget amendment in the second motion to approve. That would be more clear.
Okay.
So Melissa, will you?
My recommendation is that you approve the budget amendments for revenue and expenditures in the amount of $900,000 total in Fund 290, the Special Revenue Fund, for fiscal year 22.
Said only like you could say it. I motion to accept staff's recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation on this budget amendment. Please vote. The vote of 5-0, that budget amendment's approved.
Okay.
And item 5C.
We're almost there, guys. So the last set is, again, revenue and expenditures, but now it's in the operating account. So we're going to see the transfers out of 290 coming into the operating account, and then we're going to set up there the types of expenditures that we're going to make. in fiscal year '22. So the first part, which is March revenue, you're going to see that transfer in coming in of $900,000. Remember, we transferred $300,000 in fund balance, and we transferred $600,000 that we think we're going to collect and we're going to move over. So there you got your 900 transfer in. Ins and outs have to equal each other. And then we need to set up the expenditure accounts so that we can spend that money when needed. And some of the expenditure accounts are assistance in development financing, public infrastructure facilities and improvements, which is very much like what you approved at your last trustee meeting, the $32,500 to help the Stone Cloud project with their public infrastructure. Public school facilities, and that is a line item within the project plan where the plan is going to contribute to Stillwater Public Schools for their infrastructure. So we're building that money up. New business development, again, that was much like Stone Cloud. And so you see what we think we will anticipate spending there. And then implementation and administration, that would be legal fees, publications in the newspaper, anything along those lines. And again, that totals $900,000. Be happy to answer any questions.
Trustees, any questions? What's your recommended motion on this one, Melissa?
My recommendation is that you approve the attached budget amendments in the amount of $900,000 to Fund 856 contained within SEDA for the purpose of revenue and expenditures for fiscal year '22.
Motion to approve staff recommendations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the staff's recommendations on this budget amendment. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, that budget amendment is approved. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you for all your very hard and very detailed and very diligent work to make sure all of the numbers are going where they're supposed to be going. Are there any reports from the officers of the board? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn the to adjourn SEDA. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, the Stillwater Economic Development Authority is now adjourned. At this point, we'll return to I'll reconvene the Stillwater City Council meeting at item 12 on the agenda. Is there a motion to enter into executive session for the purposes stated on the agenda?
Motion to move into executive session.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move to executive session. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, we will now enter executive session. Thank you all.